What up, TCK Potters? Welcome back to the program. There's another episode of the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast, a.k.a. TCK Pod. I'm your host, Sky Guasco. This is episode 414 of the TCK Pod. I have two incredible guests with me today. I'm very excited to bring in for the first time Jennifer Akins, a 4for4. We'll get into her intro in just a second. And my man, Jacob Charno, who I've been working with for quite a while, but on his side and on his programs, I'm very excited to introduce him to the TCK Potters for the first time as well. Today, we are continuing our fantasy team preview series. We're diving into the AFC East, and we're getting into the Buffalo Bills and the New York Football Jets. Very excited to get into this. We got a couple other teams as well. Of course, we're going to do the Patriots and the Dolphins as well. Stick around. Bobby Lamarco will have those breakdowns for you. Follow me on Twitter at Sky Guasco. You can follow Bobby as well, Bobby Lamarco. You can find me on Instagram, fantasyfootball_TCK Pod. Leave a rate review on the podcast. Shouts out to the Believe Podcast Network. You can make sure to find them anywhere and support their programs as well. Many sports programs, and they have one channel for each NFL team. So if you want to get specific, check out the Believe Podcast Network. And also please subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment right down here on the YouTube channel and let us know how you feel about the Bills and the Jets. Without any further ado, let's invite our guests in for today. Again, Jacob Charno and Jennifer Akins, very excited to have you both in here. Thank you for joining. Jennifer, we'll start with you a little bit. Introduce yourself to the TCK Potters and just kind of let us know what you do in the fantasy world.
Okay, sure. I'm Jennifer Akins. I'm a senior writer and editor at 4for4 Football. It is my full-time job. I have been with 4for4 for 6 years, so I do a ton of redraft, best ball content, and I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes as well.
I love it. And I love your crew over there. I've been following 4for4 a long time. I've been listening to the podcast for a very long time. And I appreciate what you and everybody else do over there on that side. Jacob, man, good to have you on finally, too. You and I have been working together, but on your programs. And it's nice to finally have you on this side of the fence, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's finally time. I'm so happy that I'm finally here. I mean, what?
I told you it would happen eventually. Just
it would. What has it been? It's probably been a year and a half. Since the beginning. Since I started my show, we've been working together. But yeah, I'm Jacob Charno. I host the Hard Count Football Podcast and the Hard Count Football Podcast Live, which is Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel, and then over at Bucks Report. So you can go follow them on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, everywhere. But yeah, that's what I do. And I'm, like I said, I'm very excited to be here.
Right on, brother. Good to have you back, man. Good to have you in. If you're tuning in live, and you're welcome to jump in the comment section, and we will get to as many of those live as we can as we have room. We're talking Bills, Jets, fantasy football team previews today. And Jennifer, why don't we kick it off with you and talk some Buffalo Bills fantasy football here? Now, the Bills obviously are an ascending team. I would argue that they almost are still not in their prime yet. The big year last year, of course, Stephon Diggs comes over, Josh Allen, everything else. Not much of a run game, though. Strong defense. Got to get by the Chiefs, though, and that's, of course, the crux in the AFC. How are we feeling about Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, that mess of a run attack, in my opinion? Any other pass catchers we're looking for in Buffalo this year outside of the obvious?
Okay, you just unloaded a lot. Do you want me to answer your?
Just do your thing. Do your thing.
All right. Well, listen, we'll start at the top. We'll start with Allen. I mean, you don't really have to convince anyone, obviously, to draft Josh Allen. He's pricey though. I mean, he's pricey this year. It's one of those things. I did a pod actually last week on our pod at 4for4 on Team App, and we actually went over the Bills as well. And something that kind of came to mind for me is, really, Josh Allen is one of those players that it depends on your specific league. Like if you're talking redraft, because there's certain redraft leagues, right, where there's people that just kind of show up and they don't know too much, or they don't live and breathe fantasy like some of us do. So they'll take him in the first round. They'll take all their quarterback situation in the first round. Obviously, that's not going to happen in my world. But if he does fall, to the fourth or fifth round, he is a possibility. Allen's great. He's not getting worse, right? I mean, he's young. So I think if you value quarterbacks and you want to have an elite quarterback, go for it with Allen. I don't think he's too pricey. I will say, though, when I was looking up stuff, his rushing yardage has gone down with each year. So In 2018, he had 631 yards, and then he only had 510 in 2019, and then he only had 421 last year. So I know some people really go for that, Konami code rushing, quarterback. So, his have descended a bit. But listen, I don't need to talk anyone into Allen. When we get to the running backs, though, I absolutely agree with you, Sky. I'm someone that is not going – I'm not taking either Moss or Singletary. I just don't think – and they're both cheap, to be honest, but I don't think either of them are really worth it this season. The Bills don't run the ball, right? Except for Allen is their goal line back pretty much. Mm-hmm. They don't run the ball. They don't need to run the ball. So they're not going to all of a sudden run the ball this year either. So – the Bills, I think, were 18th last season in rushing attempts, which, is actually that number was higher than I thought it would be. But I just don't think.
A lot of that's Josh Allen, though.
Right, exactly. No, you're right. And so I just don't think, I think at that ADP, like for Moss, give me Gus Edwards or Connor there. I think they're going to run more. I think they're going to be more involved in that offense. Singletary is very cheap, and he will catch some passes. But I think if I had to pick one, I'd go with Singletary just for his cheapness. But at the end of the day, I think, let's see, Moss is running back 38 and Singletary is 43 right now on Underdog. So I don't know. For me, they're both in a void. I think last year Moss got a lot of hype and I think a lot of people got burned on him. So he could be a post-hype sleeper kind of guy, but I just don't see it.
It's been 2 years in a row for Buffalo, really, because Singletary came out as a rookie with hype as well.
Right.
And Frank Gore was on his way out, things like that. Singletary came in. He also had the hype. And look, both of these, what's frustrating in Buffalo is both of these running backs as players are very talented. Mm-hmm. And if they had workloads like you want to see in football, if they each got 20 plus touches as an individual, I think they would be fantastic in this offense with the scheme, moving the ball downfield, red zone opportunity. I think they'd be great, but they're not. They're splitting 15, 16 total touches, and you just don't know who it's going to be unless they score. Obviously, it's going to hurt them. And you mentioned Josh Allen's rushing yardage coming down. His touchdowns have always been, it's like Dak Prescott, not running a lot, but he scores a lot when he's healthy. Josh Allen's still scoring a lot of touchdowns, which obviously helps with the quarterback position. And on the other side of that, not as beefy for fantasy football points because they're scored differently, but his passing yardage has skyrocketed, frankly, since his rookie year, when he was quite literally 2 years ago, he was literally the least accurate passer in the NFL. Everybody was worried about him. They bring in Stephon Diggs, made a couple changes, another year of Brian Dable, boom. He's in the MVP race. So Josh Allen is still my man, but you're right. If you're going early QB, I think he's a target, but he's going to cost you, probably a second, third round once we get into August in home leagues. Before we move on to wide receivers and everybody else, Jacob, let's get your quick thoughts on Josh Allen and that running back core real quick.
Yeah, Josh Allen, so Josh Allen has been someone, especially as a fan of the AFC East, of a team in the AFC East. I'm watching this team very closely. It was weird to me how Josh Allen made such a big jump. And you look at it, and they got Diggs, another year of Dable, but how many years have we seen, maybe not to the extent that Josh Allen had, but how many years have we seen guys have one great season and then it kind of starts to decline, right? So I am slightly worried about Josh Allen in terms of where I would draft him, because I feel like there's other guys there that I've seen produce more and more. And Josh Allen could be the MVP this year. I've said it time and time again. He's either going to have a declining season or he's going to win the MVP this year. I'm confident he has the ability
to do it. I agree.
But Mahomes, just around that area, I still do like other quarterbacks ahead of Allen, but I would have no problem. And I don't want anyone to misconstrue what I say on this. I would have no problem taking Josh Allen this year. And then also with this running back tandem, I do still like Zach Moss. And as Jennifer was talking about it, I kind of started to not like Zach Moss as much. But I love his receiving ability. I hope they line him up at receiver in at the receiver slot at least a little bit this year, because he has that receiving ability that Devin Singletary just doesn't really have. Similar to what I think Jacksonville's going to be doing with Travis Etienne, but I'm sure, but you have a Jacksonville guy to talk about that. But I just, if they're there and it's late and I need a running back, the way I'm doing it this year is I'm taking my two running backs in the first and second round. I don't care who else is there, but if Zach Moss is there and I need him, I'll maybe take a chance on him. I'll stash him and see what the value could be there. But I completely agree with you, Jennifer, for sure.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm fading the Bills. Diggs and Allen, of course, are the front runners. But let's talk about the receiving core in general. There has been Cole Beasley conversation. Will he play? Will he not play? At differences, obviously, with the league. Stephon Diggs took the league by storm. Everybody's seen the talent for years in Minnesota, but he was in the shadow of Thielen, goes to Buffalo, the true number one, explodes last year, and really turns Josh Allen around. And we have some budding stars, younger wide receivers in Buffalo as well. So are there any other pass catchers along with Stephon Diggs, Jennifer, that you're excited about for fantasy in Buffalo?
I am, but you mentioned young, and that's not where I'm going. I'm all about Emmanuel Sanders this year. I think
nice.
that, people are all about, Gabriel Davis, and sure, I see the talent, but there's already been reports that Sanders is going to slide into that John Brown role and not Gabriel Davis. Josh Allen and the GM specifically seeked out to sign Emmanuel Sanders, and the report I read, he was heavily pursued by and Allen made sure in spring camp to kind of start to get chemistry and develop a rapport with Emmanuel Sanders. So I like Sanders, and Sanders is cheaper, so that's kind of also where I am. I think Sanders is. I wrote it down, and now I don't see it on here. Sanders, I think, is wide receiver 65 right now, and Davis is wide receiver 59. So they're being drafted similarly, but I personally prefer Sanders, I think. And listen, at the very least, they're going to rotate opposite Diggs anyway. So, I just happen to like Sanders. I know he's older. I know he's coming off his Achilles and all that. But was it Achilles or ACL? Now
Okay, I'll double check it for you.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that Sanders is, he was fine last year in New Orleans with that injury. And I think, he's someone that, listen, Davis is fine, but I just think a lot of people, especially in the fan community, are drooling over him. And I'm going for Sanders cheaper. You did mention Beasley. Oh, it's so frustrating because Beasley, when I was looking at his numbers, he's so undervalued right now. Last year he was wide receiver 34 in half PPR points a game, and he's going off the board right now at wide receiver 61, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same offense, but the problem is he's crazy. The stuff, it's like you don't know if he's going to play at this point. I don't know if you guys saw this morning, he was actually back on Twitter tweeting things.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen this morning.
Yeah, he's, listen, the whole whether to get vaccinated or not, that's a whole separate issue. But the fact that he's doubling down on the fact that he refuses to, and then he refuses to, not only does he refuse to get vaccinated, but he refuses to follow the protocol of the people that are not getting vaccinated. So I don't know where that leaves him, right? If he's not going to follow the protocol and he's not going to get vaccinated, I don't know if he's going to be on the team. I just don't know what's going to happen with him. However, if he does play, as their slot guy, he's so undervalued right now, and he I would say quietly gets things done, but he's not quiet right now. But in past years, he's not someone that people really want to take. But yet, like I said, last year he ended up being, he was a wide receiver 3, at the end of the season. So that's kind of where I stand on Beasley. I drafted him a ton this spring in best ball, and I haven't been just because I don't know what's going to happen now. So I'm glad I have some just in case. But as far as redraft goes, I'll probably stay away from him as well.
Before we get comments, is there any reason to look at Dawson Knox or anybody else a little bit deeper? I'm talking deep dynasty.
Hollister. I'm all about Hollister. Not for redraft as far as your tight end one or anything, but I think people should definitely keep an eye on Hollister for streaming possibilities this season. Last year he led Seattle, in half PPR points per game. The guy, he's good. And Knox, the problem with Knox, I don't know. Supposedly I was reading something where he hired some sort of guy to help him with hand-eye coordination. I don't know how that, at this point in his life and career, if that's really going to make a difference, someone to help him catch the ball. But I just don't, I feel like if Knox was going to be a thing in Buffalo, he would have already been a thing in Buffalo. So Hollister is intriguing to me for late in best ball, and then someone just to kind of keep in the back of your mind, for streaming purposes, because he may break out in those first 2 weeks and people are going to rush to the waiver wire for him.
That's a great name to throw out there. That's why we do the deep dives real quick, because probably not in redraft, but look, we're talking week 3 or 4 waiver wires, and you want to have guys. I do a column during the regular season, which is basically, you do your waiver wire column like everybody does, but then I always do a almost like a beat the waiver wire is kind of the cliche term, but looking at a week ahead, saying this guy got a little bit nicked up, he came back to play, but like if that's serious, look at this guy, or this guy actually had 6 catches and a touchdown. If he gets any more, so Hollister is a great guy because when he was in Seattle, he was absolutely productive and proficient, but just a classic case of couldn't stay healthy, and they get rid of him. So we'll see. And I'm just curious if Brian Dable really actually wants to utilize the tight end position in this offense. So maybe it's less Dawson Knox and more they don't even use the tight end, or vice versa. Yeah. We'll see. But I like that. I like that name. I did think he was a great deep add there in Seattle. Jacob, let's get your quick thoughts on just the general wide receiver core and pass catchers for the Buffalo Bills before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, Diggs is the obvious wide receiver. I'll take Diggs anywhere at this point. I mean, he's fantastic. He's a clear-cut wide receiver one. I think he could finish within. I mean, he has the potential to finish as the wide receiver one in fantasy this season. Absolutely. Sure. And then with this Cole Beasley stuff, I mean, if he's not on the team, whoever fills his spot, I'll take. I think it probably would it be Gabriel Davis? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. But you see, Gabriel Davis, in my opinion, is more of an outside receiver, and Emmanuel Sanders, especially at the age, you just keep him in the slot and have him. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders. This is what I'll say about Emmanuel Sanders. Sorry to cut you off. And this is a random name to bring up, but Willie Snead, who has not been. He's not been fantasy relevant for years and years and years. But back in the day when he was on the Saints with Drew Brees, he was fantasy relevant, but he stayed in the NFL another 10 years because he's a great NFL wide receiver. He blocks, he gets dirty, he keeps his mouth shut, he catches first downs. He doesn't mind being the 4th string guy to help the guy. So Emmanuel Sanders is that guy in his career. Also, Emmanuel Sanders has Super Bowl experience on multiple teams, playoff experience. This is a very young, I don't want to use the word immature necessarily in a derogatory term, but a young squad that could use serious experienced veteran leadership. And Emmanuel Sanders brings that off the field. On the field, he brings a toughness, a grit, played through injuries this whole season. Last year, an ankle, hamstring, ACL, and COVID. So it took him down. Eventually, he just couldn't withstand it. But over his career, he's been extremely tough and resilient. And I think that like matches kind of that Bills identity anyway. So again, we'll see what happens for fantasy. If Beasley is out, Emmanuel Sanders is much more attractive to me. Jennifer, I'll push back a little bit, and I think you can go hand in hand on this. I will go Gabriel Davis just because of the younger upside, looking to hit the ceiling versus Emmanuel Sanders, kind of a basic floor. But if Beasley is out, I think you can't go wrong with either one of them. Jake, I'm sorry to cut you off, man. I had to throw that in there, though. Go ahead and finish your point.
Oh, you're completely right. You said exactly what I was going to say. I mean, Gabriel Davis is younger. Emmanuel Sanders he's pretty banged up, right? I don't trust him to maybe play all 17 games now of the season. And to be to be that wide receiver 3/flex. I think in terms of if there's a favorable matchup, I know the Bills play the Texans this year, so I'm taking everyone on the Bills when they play the Texans this year. So I think that would be maybe a week I stream him, but as a consistent wide receiver that I'm starting my lineup, I'd probably take Davis, but you're definitely right. Sanders, there's definitely the chance that Sanders is more productive than Davis is here.
And we could be splitting hairs even more so because John Brown leaves. If that's Gabriel Davis now, I love that position for the Bills. And if Cole Beasley's out and Emmanuel Sanders is that role too, all 3 of these guys could be wide receiver 3s. Obviously Diggs, potentially top 5, top 3 if everything clicks again. But the other 2 could definitely be a value. And frankly, being undrafted currently or 12th plus round or so. Okay. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm so happy John Brown left the Bills. I remember it was week 1, 2019. I was at that game. It was opening day, Bills Jets. And I remember John Brown, the Jets took a 16-0 lead. And then John Brown just tore us apart the rest of the game. Beat us. Man, it was rough. That was a rough week to be Jets fan.
Or you're an actual Jets fan, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. See, I grew up a Dolphin fan. So talking about the Bills is a little bit weird for me, like in a positive, spin. Because I grew up a full on, like my parents are original season ticket holders in Miami, like Dolphin fans. So I don't like the Jets. I will say though, however, my son's middle name is Namath, so that my husband won there. My husband's a Jets fan, so we kind of We did the whole coin toss. He won. So my son's middle name is Namath.
I love that.
I don't know if it's been Marino.
No, I don't know. It would have been something else, probably not football related, but
I think Zonka would have been a nice middle name. What do you think?
Yes. It's funny. Actually, Don Shula, he lived in my neighborhood as a kid, and they had a dog named Zonka. It was actually Zonk, but that was their dog. That was their dog's name. Yeah.
Oh man, Larry Zonka, legend. Cool.
Yes.
Awesome. Any final thoughts from either one of you on Buffalo Bills, fantasy football, dynasty, redraft, best ball, anything before we move on to the Jets?
I will add, because those of you probably don't know this, but I'm a huge kicker proponent. So I love I love me some Tyler Bass. Can
you rep your article, please? Because it was extremely helpful.
Oh, you read it? Yeah, thank you. Yes,
I
have an article on 444 that is debunking the randomness of kickers in fantasy football. So I kind of go over how it's not so random at all. Most people think it is. It's everyone think it's really cool to hate kickers, but they're actually phenomenal.
I am pro kicker. I'm pro kicker.
They're a great way to get a 10 to 12 point swing every week based on matchups, and people just ignore it. But if you're not gonna stream kickers and you're just gonna take one, Tyler Bass is a good one to take because the Bills are going to be favored in probably 15 out of 16 games this season, if not all of them. And Bass is going to have plenty of chances to score. So there's my little kicker. I have to work a kicker into every pod somewhere.
I'm so glad you did. And Jennifer, we got connected a few weeks ago, and I was drafting in the Scott Fish Bowl, and I was researching, and I realized in Scott Fish Bowl, which is crazy settings, I've been over it multiple times on the show. I don't need to rehash it now, but you can, which I find interesting, and I want to start kind of implementing this into my personal leagues and things, TCK listener leagues and stuff. You can use a kicker as a flex position if you'd like to. Now, a lot of people think like kickers, come on. But you're right. Some of these guys are, who was it? Jason Sanders last year. Younghoe Koo. Those guys are going 15, 18 points a week. That's better than any second flex, right? Other than a boom. So I love that strategy and ability. So I'm deep diving. I'm in like the 18th round of Scott Fish Bowl or whatever. And I'm like, let me look at a kicker. Of course, Younghoe Koo and Zerline and Tucker, Butker, they're all gone. So I'm like, who else is there? And I found your article on 444, and I started diving in it. And Daniel Carlson was a guy that I really liked for the Raiders anyway. Robbie Gould with the Niners, just because I'm biased. But then Tyler Bass was there, and I ended up picking Tyler Bass. And I just loved your breakdown. Most of their games are at home this year because you have the 17, so they have 9 and 8, and they get that ninth one at home. Now, of course, it's nasty in the winter, but before that, they play on like the weird like outdoor turf. So like the field should be clean and all that stuff. Anyway, I really appreciate it. And for those of us that don't hate kickers, I thought it was a very useful article. So
I'm glad. And I like Tyler Bass. I actually got sniped on Tyler Bass in Scott Fish Bowl, which was kind of a bummer. It was kind of a bummer, but I ended up with two quarterbacks. I got Butker and I got Ryan Suckup. So I'm cool with both of those guys.
Yeah. Brady's kicker for the last 20 years has been just fine.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good call. Yeah. Yeah. And it was crazy in Scott Fish. I think Younghoe Koo went, I want to say like 8th round in my league or something like that. And of course you're like, what are you doing in a 22 round league? But again, kickers can be a flex, and people were drafting 3 of them. And anyway, it was madness.
People were disappointed that I only took 2 because I'm such a proponent for them. But I'm like, look, I'm not an idiot. Like I'm gonna, of course I'm gonna take other players. But I did take 2. I actually would have taken a third. I think I was targeting Rodrigo Blankenship, who personal reasons. I went to UGA. I've loved him for many years. So I would have taken him. He went. So I think I ended up taking, I don't even remember. I think I took a 4th quarterback at that point, but
respect the specs. Respect
the specs. Yep.
Man, I love it down there. I got a lot of.
I would have worn that shirt. I have a shirt with his face on it that says respect.
Oh, do you really?
Oh, that's awesome.
He's, it's funny. I watched him, of course, every game at Georgia. And then when he was coming into the league, I remember there was this meme going around of him at the combine, like, oh, this guy's an NFL player. I'm like, you guys are going to laugh and eat your words because he's going to, I thought he was going to get drafted. He didn't, but I was like, he's going to make a team and he's going to be the starter and he's going to be a stud. And he ended up doing all of those things. Yeah, except he was not drafted, but he was signed by the Colts right away and then ended up winning the starting job, which I knew he would.
Yeah, the picture of him next to DK Metcalf is so funny.
Yeah, I know.
Funny. Man,
I do like it.
And then the story of him, how he like stayed home from a team dinner or something to play Legos with his
Yeah,
girlfriend.
he's a total nerd. It's hilarious.
He's like my favorite player.
I love players like that are against the grain from like the traditional NFL player.
Absolutely.
And guys like Rodrigo Blankenship are like the everyday person, you know? It's like,
I mean,
it's like, whoa, that guy's in the NFL. It's, you know, it's pretty cool. So I appreciate it. All right. Great breakdown on the Bills, Jennifer. Thank you so much. Let's turn the page here and get into the New York Football Jets. All right, Jacob, I know you got let's try to keep this into a half hour. You probably got about 4 hours of research going on your Jets here. So busy offseason, obviously. The Jets have been a mess. They get rid of Gase finally. Sam Darnold goes to Carolina. They bring in Zach Wilson, who was the number 2 pick. I know it was very public that he was going number 2 in the weeks leading up to the draft. I was still very surprised that they actually went with Zach Wilson, number 2, personally. You get my guys, Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur, coming over from the Niners, so enjoy that. Wishing them the best. I've been calling the Jets my East Coast Niners now. I got to root for them, like, just because I love Saleh and LaFleur. And then you get Michael Carter as well. You bring in Corey Davis. A super, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but a super deep sleeper at tight end is a guy I'm looking at as well. Will we actually see Chris Herndon come through? Is Jamison Crowder going to take the pay cut and pay off? So much going on with the Jets, man. The floor is yours. Let's get it.
Let me preface this whole conversation with whatever I'm about to say, that this is out of all the teams in the entire NFL, this is the hardest team to look at for fantasy. And they're my favorite team. I'm a diehard New York Jets fan, and it was so hard to pick players for this. But like I said, let's start at the top. The easiest way to look at the Jets' production in fantasy this year is to look at this 49ers offense from last year. And that's how I'm doing it this year. So starting off with Zach Wilson, rookie quarterback, the Jets are going to be relying heavily on the run game this year. In terms of fantasy, I'll be honest, I'm not drafting Zach Wilson because he's a rookie in a division when every other team has a great defense and great head coaches. And you know, whatever round that you're going to end up taking Zach Wilson, if you want to stash him, like, he's going to go undrafted in, if I were to guess, most of your leagues. But in whatever round you think you want to take him, I'm taking guys. I mean, a Derek Carr, a Ryan Fitzpatrick, I trust a lot more on a consistent basis than I would Zach Wilson right now. But yeah, they're relying heavily on the run. I think Wilson is going to be really, really solid. But Robert Saleh, when they drafted him, they told him, hey, you're not going to have to elevate the team. The team is going to elevate you. So they're not going to put this weight on his shoulders to make him throw. I mean, wasn't there a game where Jimmy Garoppolo literally threw like 13 passes? Like, I could see there being.
He threw like 23. Well, I don't have it in front of me. He threw under 30 passes in the entire NFC playoffs leading into the Super Bowl. Total. He threw under 30 passes total leading up to in 3 games until he got to the Super Bowl in 2019.
Right. So I could see something very similar happening with Zach Wilson this year, especially in his rookie season. Belichick is fantastic against rookie quarterbacks. Brian Flores is a great defensive mind. Sean McDermott is great. These are just well defensive minded coaches. So I'm not taking Zach Wilson this season. I don't even really think there's huge upside to him just because of the amount of throw. He's not going to make a lot of throws this year, so he can't put up a lot of points if you're not throwing the ball, right? I mean, unless you're Lamar Jackson, but he's not Lamar Jackson. So, yeah. But at running back, Michael Carter is the name. That's the name to remember here. Like I said, the Jets are going to establish the run game. Week 1, they're going to establish the run game, and it's going to stay consistent for the entire season. His only competition in this backfield, in my opinion, I know the Michael Piron's there. I know Ty Johnson's there. I know Josh Adams is there. But the only competition is Tevin Coleman. If Coleman can stay healthy, which, I mean, we haven't seen a ton of in his career, they love Michael Carter. Training camp starts today, as of July 20th. But it's Coleman. They loved Michael Carter in OTAs and all that, and I can guarantee you he's going to be the RB1. But I could see them, like, Mostert was the RB1 in San Francisco, but Jeff Wilson got touches, right? Coleman got touches when he was healthy. So it's hard for me to immediately start Michael Carter, but I think by week 4 or 5, you are going to be so incredibly happy that you have him, because the Jets focus this offseason on not fixing the quarterback position, but surrounding the quarterback, whoever was there, with the most possible talent and to keep him upright, right? Mekhi Becton is coming into his second year. He is an absolute monster. I don't have to say anything about him. They trade up for Elijah Vera Tucker in the first round with that Seattle pick. Take him, I think it was pick 13 or 14 maybe. And he's already, they say he has everything of a decade starter offensive lineman. He has all the intangibles so far. Center, Connor McGovern coming in again. He's pretty solid. If Greg Van Roten at right guard is our weakest position this season, this offensive line is going to be a unit, right? And then at right tackle, they signed Morgan Moses. And even if let's say Becton, his injuries catch up to him, or something happens with Morgan Moses, George Fant is a fantastic sixth O-lineman to have on your bench. He's fantastic. So I'd want to draft whatever running back is running behind this offensive line, especially with the amount that they're going to be running the ball, right? I mean, so I'm taking Michael Carter. He's absolutely worth stashing wherever you can get him. I know he's going pretty early right now. I don't know what his ADP is, but he's really, really good. And a lot of people don't know the name because he was outshined by Javonte Williams over at UNC, and he was a 4th round running back. Which, I mean, Jets fans know the name, and if you're a lifelong fantasy fan, and you dig deep every single season like we do, you'll know Michael Carter's name. And if you don't, you'll know it by week 4. I can guarantee that. So yeah, Tevin Coleman, I'm not taking Tevin Coleman. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, first of all, Tevin Coleman coming over is, again, I think it's another good clubhouse move. You have a new coaching regime. They coach Tevin Coleman with the 49ers. They bring him back over there. I don't think anybody, probably including Tevin Coleman, expects Tevin Coleman to play a full season. What they want him to do is come in, coach up the kid running backs, help them out, get them some pro experience, and then take the early down workload early in the season as long as he can handle it. I agree with you, Jacob. I think Michael Carter takes over eventually, but what made San Francisco so dominant in the run game for the last 4 or 5 years with Shanahan is not one single running back. You just mentioned it, Jeff Wilson, right? Tevin Coleman, but JaMychal Hasty, undrafted free agent, baller for 2 games. You know what I mean? You have all these guys. Jerick McKinnon, when his 3 healthy games over 3 years, he was excellent as well. So the Niners have had a lot of opportunity, but not with one person because they get hurt so much. They've had a committee with a lead dog. So I think he hit that on the head. That's Tevin Coleman early. Carter should be worked in. And on the offensive line, they're bringing in Elijah Vera Tucker, who can play both positions. As you mentioned, out of USC is going to be huge in a first-round pick. So I like it a lot. As far as Zach Wilson, again, I like the arm talent and everything else. He stormed the scene in the last month of the draft. But I personally had Trey Lance and Justin Fields ahead of him, just as far as NFL talent. And not to bash on the Jets or New York in general, but it's a tough franchise to go to with just the history and the media and everything else. And Zach Wilson.
His mom is not helping.
I was just going to say Zach Wilson has a few off the field distractions as well. That could be tough. So I wish the kid well. I hope he balls. I've been a fan of football for 25 years. 2 years where Mark Sanchez accidentally made the playoffs and made a run when Brady was hurt is the only time I can remember the Jets being good. Other than that, it's been tough. So I'm hoping for you and the Jets fandom, you guys can bounce back here. And I'm hoping with this coaching staff that I believe a lot in, my Niners guys can help you out there. So we'll see what happens. Jennifer, your quick thoughts on the Jets before we move on to the pass catchers.
Sure. Well, my first thought, it's funny. I'm obviously older than you. I absolutely remember when the Jets were good. They were completely painful, like in the old, like Joe Klecko, whatever. They were a painful childhood. They were good. So I do remember when they were good. I'm very happy that they're not. But as far as fantasy goes, I have a lot of the same thoughts. I'm not as super in on Michael Carter. I understand that he eventually will be the lead back. I don't know that I want a 4th round running back as my, fantasy quarterback or as my fantasy running back. I've been taking a little bit of Tevin Coleman in best ball, sprinkling him in. I've also been throwing darts at Ty Johnson just because you don't know. But listen, I think Michael Carter, I mean, he they drafted him to be the guy. I just don't know if he will be the guy in his rookie season. I hope he is for Jets purposes and fantasy purposes too. As far as Wilson goes, I agree with what you guys said. He's definitely not a redraft guy at all. I've been kind of avoiding him altogether just because, and it's hard. I mean, we all have recency bias, right? The Jets, there's no longer Adam Gase, but it's hard to really think that way. And so we all kind of have that bias of like the Jets are going to suck no matter what. And they're probably not, but at the same time, it's kind of, it's ingrained over the last few years to just kind of avoid that whole team. So that's kind of, where I am with those guys. I'm sure you're going to get to the receivers next. And there are some guys there that I would roll the dice on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because you mentioned Jacob. I think this is a big, it's not a fantasy thing, but it's an overall bird's eye view mentality you have to have looking at teams, players, and competition. The division outside of the Jets, coaching wise and experience and defense, is stellar. So you have a rookie head coach, although obviously Sala was a defensive coordinator, rookie head coach, new offensive coordinator, rookie quarterback, and new pieces all around him, going up against 3 gnarly defenses and head coaches 6 games a year. It's definitely going to be tough. My earliest Jets memory, I was just thinking about, I'm going to guess it was like 96. My numbers might be off a little bit. Pete Carroll was the head coach, and they went 1-15. That's all I remember. They went 1-15, and that was my
1996 was my first year playing fantasy football.
Boom. Nice. It all comes full circle.
It all comes full circle.
I feel like we've spent too much time bashing on Jacob and his Jets. So give us some good news about the pass catchers, man. I am excited about a couple pass catchers. So let's turn it positive, man. Tell me about the wide receivers and any tight ends you might be excited about.
Listen, if there's anybody that bashes the Jets more, it's Jets fans. So there's
gotta love New York. Yeah,
we are aggressive towards our team, absolutely, especially last year. This year we're optimistic, but we're optimistic every single season. Yeah, like you said, Adam Gase isn't there anymore. He limited this offense. The fact that I had to watch 17 weeks of Frank Gore running the football is ridiculous when we had 2 young backs that we could have used. And, man, it was just rough. But the one positive, or one of the main positives that came out of this offseason, was this pass-catching group, like you said. Man, so I'll start with Corey Davis. So I compare Corey Davis to Brandon Ayuk for this season, right? He's a deep threat. He's fast. He can do a lot. They signed him to do more than just run go routes. They signed him. They signed him for a lot of money. I think it was 3 years, $37.5 million. So you don't just sign him for 4 targets, 5 targets a game, right? They're going to throw the ball to him. When I'm looking at Zach Wilson, right, in terms of fantasy, he's irrelevant, but the kid can throw the ball. And if he has time to throw the ball, he can launch it deep. Yeah, he has the arm talent is there, and you see it in practice, and you see it you see it every time he's on the field. So Corey Davis is going to be that guy for him, whether that's, go routes or post routes or whatever you want. Corey Davis is going to catch the football this year. I can promise you he's going to have 3-4 long touch, one of those long 80-yard, 76-yard touchdowns that we see from him every single season. We saw last year, I'm sure you guys know that play where he just caught it and he went like 60 yards down the sideline and nobody touched him. And then he dove into the end zone. And it's just just Corey Davis. He's just the most confusing player in all of fantasy. He finished as the wide receiver 15 in the second half of last season. So I'm taking a chance on Corey Davis this year. I don't know about you guys, but I really like Corey Davis this year. I think he's going to get the most targets on the Jets out of any of these other receivers, and that's an unpopular opinion, but I absolutely think that's going to be how it is because Zach Wilson loves to throw the long ball. So yeah, I'll take a chance on Corey Davis this year as a wide receiver, even 2 or 3 for my team.
Before we get into our thoughts, can you finish up any other wide receivers or tight ends, and then we'll just kind of take them as a group?
Yeah. So Denzel Mims, he's a deep sleeper. I love Denzel Mims. He's very boomer bust though, and the only bust potential he has is because of his injuries. He got injured. He was injured mostly the entire offseason last year. Missed a few games. He had a problem with his hand. but the kid has great hands. He can catch the ball. He has like he's not Julio, but Julio Jones level contested catch abilities. I mean, he can jump. If you go back and look at film, there's plays where he's beating Denzel Ward time after time again. The main problem was he wasn't getting the targets. He wasn't getting looked at because the problem with Sam Darnold, he never looked off his first option. So it was always Jamison Crowder, and and Adam Gase's offense was was heavily favored towards the slot receiver. So Jamison Crowder got all those targets that Mims should have gotten. But when Mims was throwing the football, he was fantastic. So I think that Mims is absolutely someone to take a chance on this year. And I think he ends up booming from week one. Elijah Moore is the other name we've heard a lot about. Cadet at Ole Miss, second round receiver, should have been a first round receiver. He has that talent. The only problem with Elijah Moore, and he's going to, if you're in a league where, I mean, I strictly do redraft. That's I haven't really figured out how to do anything else yet because I don't have people who consistently play fantasy football every year. But if you're in a dynasty or whatever it is, take Elijah Moore because within a year or two, he's going to be not only the wide receiver one on this team, but he's going to get, I think he has the chance to be a top 15 receiver in the league. Probably he has so much talent, like so much talent. And then all these coaches are raving about him. All these scouts were raving about him. The problem is Jamison Crowder because Elijah Moore plays the slot and so does Jamison Crowder. And Jamison Crowder took a 50% pay cut this season. And I can only assume that that he wouldn't have done it if the Jets weren't like, you're going to take this pay cut, but you're still going to get the same amount of playing time, right? So I worry about that when it comes to Elijah Moore's playing time. I doubt they want to throw the rookie in there right away. So I think they'll split time. So I'm avoiding Crowder and Elijah Moore this season. But yeah, Corey Davis and Denzel Mims. And then at the tight end position, Sky, we've talked about him. Kenny Yeboah, who is a name that nobody knows. Nobody knows who Kenny Yeboah is because he was an undrafted free agent. And I think Kenny Yeboah beats out Chris Herndon in training camp.
Yeah, me too.
What about Tyler Kroft?
Kroft is going to be him and Herndon are going to have very similar roles, I think, this season. They're both incredible blocking tight ends. But Kenny Yeboah can catch the ball. He can run. How he went undrafted is beyond me because he's that talented. But like I said, you look at this Niners offense and you saw Kittle's production in the West Coast offense, and we know how much rookie quarterbacks love their tight ends. So I can only assume Kenny Yeboah is going to have a ton of fantasy production this season. So I am taking Kenny Yeboah, and he'll be available to you incredibly late. And I don't know how it's working, but I think he's basically free in most of the leagues that I've looked at because nobody knows who he is. So I'm absolutely taking Kenny Yeboah. And even if Chris Herndon is the starter, then they're not going to utilize the tight end position a lot because he is a strictly blocking tight end next season for the Jets. I can guarantee you that.
Which is really tough because Chris Herndon was kind of he was a Eric Ebron-esque talent that we wanted to see blow up, and Gase never used him. And honestly, I just can't wait until like David Njoku and Chris Herndon leave their respective teams and get another shot, because I think both of those guys as individuals are ballers, but they're not getting utilized properly in their schemes. Currently, the Browns have 3 tight ends. The Jets have 3 tight ends. It's just not working out. Kenny Yeboah, for me, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek. Tyler Kroft is out there, you're right. And once Herndon went down, Tyler Kroft did well and caught a number of touchdowns last year. Kenny Yeboah, for me, though, is the talent currently that we've wanted Chris Herndon to be over the last couple of years. 5th-year senior coming out of Temple, not a huge draft pedigree. I think that's just why he fell, but incredibly productive against lesser competition in college, and I think he will be fine moving forward. So Kenny Yeboah, mainly a dynasty stash, but somebody to keep an eye on. Jennifer, what are your thoughts here on the pass catchers here for the Jets? You said you had a couple names you were looking at.
Well, no, it's interesting. I actually completely agree with what he said. I think people are really high on Elijah Moore, and I'm not there. I'm definitely going with Davis of all. It's too bad. I really like Crowder a lot, and I really was hoping that he went somewhere else because it's just a little bit, confusing now to have him there and to try to figure out what's going to happen. Like if he would have gone to Green Bay or just somewhere else where, he would have been that wide receiver 2 or whatever. But yeah, I mean, looking at their ADP, like Elijah Moore and Corey Davis are really similar. I mean, they were literally one spot apart. So it's kind of on who you believe in more, or what you think is going to happen at that point. And then Crowder, like they're both like they're right now an underdog. They're 109 and 110, and then Jamison Crowder is 164. So he's a heck of a lot cheaper. But I'll take Davis and I'll sprinkle in a little bit of Moore and Crowder here and there. But like Jacob said, really, Davis is the only one that I'm really after. And then as far as the tight ends go, I haven't really been taking any. I just threw out Croft out there just because I know he's there. But,
another name. Yeah.
I'm not. I was definitely a Herndon believer a couple of years ago.
Me too.
Him and Darnold had great chemistry that one season when they were able to connect, and then he got hurt, and then last year he didn't do anything. So I'm definitely not taking any Jets tight ends. But now you just mentioned a name that I didn't know, so now I'm going to have now I'm going to possibly have to throw a dart or two in best ball.
We got another one, Jacob. We're one by one. The Kenny Yeboah train is.
Listen, I will any kind of deep tight end, I'm all about it.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, the Kenny Yeboah jerseys are the most expensive because you can only customize them.
Exactly. Yeah. They're an extra $45 because you have to spell his name.
Man, and Chris Herndon, it's such a shame because he's going to be probably the biggest what if in this Jets pass catching group of the last 5 years, next to maybe Quincy Enunwa. I mean, this is
good name.
I mean, I miss Quincy Enunwa. He was it's a shame with his neck problems and everything. It was rough, but he was so good that one. I think it was 2018. He was really, really, really solid. So it is what it is. But Kenny Yeboah is the name. If there's anybody on this Jets offense to look out for, it's Kenny Yeboah.
One more point here, and we'll wrap up. And I'll get both your thoughts on this. And this is a Jamison Crowder, Elijah Moore focal question, but just kind of in general, in NFL coaching trees, new teams, draft capital, that whole umbrella conversation. How much stock do both of you put into this coaching regime, who happens to be new for the Jets, drafted Elijah Moore, versus Jamison Crowder's kind of been there on the Jets and they retained him for depth, good clubhouse guy, veteran leadership, whatever that might be, but he's not quote unquote their guy. We don't see it with wide receivers so much, but we see it with running backs all the time in the NFL, right? Frank Gore has had a job and look, in my opinion, he's a Hall of Famer. He's a Niner. Frank Gore's my guy, but he's been done for 10 years probably, but he keeps getting jobs because he has relationships and he's trustworthy and people like him in the league, right? So he continues to have a job. Whereas a guy like Todd Gurley, who's, 4 years short of 30, Le'Veon Bell, these other guys who might be useful aren't, because they don't have that same, locker room pedigree, I guess. Elijah Moore and Jamison Crowder might be neck and neck, but again, rookie, unknown, veteran leadership. But this regime drafted Elijah Moore. Does that hold any weight to either one of you? Jennifer, I'll kick off with you, and then Jacob will get your thoughts. But does that sway you either way on what might go down, or is just kind of Crowder's the veteran, so he's the starter, and Moore's got to earn his position?
Well, like Jacob said, I just feel like they had to have told him something in order to keep him here and taking such a huge pay cut. There was plenty of other jobs in the NFL where he could have walked in. I mean, he could have walked into Detroit and been their wide receiver one, know? Mm-hmm. So I feel like they had to have obviously placated him in some way to keep him there. But I do think, like you said, when people are their guy, I think there is something to be said for that, because we see it happen all the time where a new regime comes in and, I didn't draft him, or I didn't, even in college football, I didn't recruit him. So he ends up not being the starter. So, but I feel like if Crowder's still there for a reason. I mean, they have plenty of, between Mims and Davis, and they had already signed Davis at that point. They already had enough. They didn't need to keep him or talk him into staying. So I feel like there is a reason, which is why I am drafting him in certain spots, because I feel like he will probably get more usage than maybe we think he will.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Crowder he's a guy who I know he's a great locker room guy. I've heard that from not only Jets reporters, but I interviewed Vincent Smith, who was he's the wide receiver 25 on the Jets, but and I actually think he's really solid. But he was talking about Crowder and talking about how important he was to his development and all that, and to have him there for Elijah Moore, and to have them both, because I think that the Jets, and you were talking about this before, Sky, and it's kind of hitting me. It hit me before and it's hitting me now. The Jets could definitely be not only rotating the running back position, but having this wide receiver group on a tandem as well, where, you never see these corners aren't going up against the same guy 5 times in a game. You're not going up against the same guy over and over and over again and picking up tendencies. You're facing Corey Davis, and then you're facing Elijah Moore, and then Denzel Mims, each with their own unique set of abilities and problems that you're going to have to deal with. So that's going to be interesting for sure. But yeah, they definitely told Crowder something. And also, I mean, you were talking about Todd Gurley and Le'Veon Bell and all these running backs not having jobs because of, they don't have those same relationships that Frank Gore does or Adrian Peterson does or any of that. Le'Veon is his own mess.
Well, he already did the Jets. That was a bad example. Sorry.
Yeah. But Todd Gurley, this is not relevant to the conversation, but Todd Gurley now, after this stuff, you already had your guy on about the Rams, right?
Yeah, we haven't talked about the news today, but either way.
I mean, are you smelling a possible reunion with Todd Gurley in Los Angeles? I don't know. That's definitely something I would look for.
I'm definitely you're correct in them having to make shift. They're going to have to use multiple running backs, multiple wide receivers, and these head coaches are 3 of the top 10 in the league easy, and they all happen to be in the same division. And again, against what Bill Belichick, his record, I don't have it off top, but it's
ridiculous,
unbelievable versus rookie quarterback, no matter who they are, right?
He's going to have to do the same thing, by the way. Belichick's going to have to rotate everything because they don't have much going on there either.
No, they don't. But I'm less concerned about the Patriots, A, because they have a ton of veterans, B, they have Belichick and McDaniels, whereas the Jets are they're the Frosh to the varsity league. That's just what it is. Mm-hmm. And again, I think long term, like 5 years from now, if everything clicks and Zach Wilson works out, and the Jets could be the truth, and the Jets, Bills, and Dolphins, if the Patriots ever for real stumble, could absolutely be an incredible division after 2 decades of Brady time. So I think it could go well. I just am not excited about it necessarily this year. And with all of the teams we've talked about and all the players we've talked about, some guys are more excited than others. To be honest with you, there's no Jet player that I'm like, I need to get that guy in my draft. Period. Yeah. There's just not. Some will fall. Everybody's got value, blah, blah, blah. The Kenny Yeboah is kind of fun just to call my shot from draft day. But other than that stuff, I'm not really feeling it. Before we get out of here, any final thoughts on the Jets at all?
Take flight. Let's go Jets. Let's do it. But yeah, no, this Jets team is hard to draft. It's hard to look at them right now.
There's just a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of potential, but a lot of unknowns.
Immediate appeal on when you look at this team on paper. When we get to midway through the season, I think there's going to be some guys that have some value. But to be honest, it's hard to navigate who those guys are right now.
I agree. Jennifer, any final thoughts on the Jets?
No, I mean, we've covered it. Same thing. There's no one sexy that you want to take, but like you said, some way through the season, there will be guys on the waiver wire that will be available that will surprise people and be serviceable in your bye week and flex spots. But as far as redraft goes, yeah, they need another year to marinate.
Yeah, I agree with you. Marinades, I think, is a perfect word. Well, I appreciate you both coming in. And before we get out of here, please, Jennifer, why don't we start with you and let everybody know where they can find all of your work. Again, I just want to throw you a personal shout out. The last couple of weeks I've been diving in. I've been on 4for4 forever, and I'm sure I've read your articles in general over time. But I happened to catch a few of them specifically during the Scott Fish Bowl, and I was like, this is a great artitle. Who wrote it? And it was you, like 4 times in a row. So well done.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate your work, and I want to make sure I reached out on Twitter and just gave you a fist bump. But then I was like, hey, you know what? You should come on and talk some ball too. So I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for spending some time with us today. You do a lot of work all over the place. So please let the TCK Potters know your handles and all that and where they can find all your works.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you. I appreciate the love. That's very kind. I am on Twitter at the Monday Mommy, and then all my work is at 4for4. I do a ton of stuff right now. We have player debates. We have depth chart battle debates coming out and all kinds of stuff. So, and then during the season, I write a kicker streaming article. I write a dead weight report, which is basically the opposite of the waiver wire. It's guys that you should drop every week. And then I've got 2 other articles this week in season that I'm not sure what they're TBD at the moment. So
Sweet.
That's where you can find me.
I like that idea of the dead weight article. It's like equally as important because so many waiver pickups are attractive for that week. And then it's like, oh, he didn't play or he got hurt too, or they didn't utilize him. And then you dump him anyway and you burned all your fab or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that dead weight, I think, is just as important. That, like, can you think of anybody from last year who might have been like the key dead weight guy to drop before it was too late?
Actually, I can, because I got a lot of crap for it. And it was Marquise Hollywood Brown. I was on it right away. I was like, dude, just drop him. This is not going to happen this season. And I got so much crap for it. And then weeks later, people are like, oh, I'm dropping it. I'm like, yeah, you should have 4 weeks ago. But no, it's funny. Like a couple years ago in the middle of the night, it came to me. I was like, you know what? Everyone and their mother writes, a waiver wire, and nobody talks about who you should be dropping every week. So I think this will be the 3rd or 4th year of me doing that. It comes out on Tuesdays during the season, and so
I'm shocked that myself and I haven't heard about that specific thing. People talk about it during waiver wire episodes, but nobody like has a designated article to it. I think that's very smart, and I'll be utilizing that tool this year. Absolutely. So appreciate it. Jennifer Akins, thank you very much. Jacob, your turn, buddy. Let us know where we can find all your work.
Man, I needed that dead weight article with Hollywood. Hollywood last year was the reason I lost. And
most people
week.
T.Y. Hilton was another one.
You gotta let go of the emotion. You gotta let it go.
It's a problem, because the problem with fantasy people is that, like, we'll get our guy and we'll draft them and we'll be so excited, and when they aren't actually producing and it doesn't work out, because it's hard for people to admit they're wrong. It's so hard, and it's so hard to admit to yourself that you're wrong with fantasy. And Hollywood, I drafted him way earlier than I'd like to admit, and he was my wide receiver 2. Terry McLaurin was my wide receiver 1, because I went, Sky, I don't know if you remember me telling you this. I went Kamara. I got Kamara and at pick 5, which was later than I thought I would get him. And then I got Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the 2nd round. He fell to me somehow. And then I had to get McLaurin and whatever. And then Beasley was actually my wide receiver 3. So that was very relevant to this pod. But man, I should have listened to the Hollywood stuff. I needed to drop him. It was rough.
Well, now you know where you can find it. Where can we find all your work, bud?
Yeah, so check me out. The Hard Count Football Podcast live is Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Hard Count Football YouTube channel and on Bucks Report. Follow me on Twitter at Jacob Charno, Instagram at Hard Count Football. DM me, tell me I'm wrong about something I said. I get a lot of them. I love talking. If you're gonna come at me though, at least bring me some sort of evidence or whatever. Don't just be a talking mouth, because that annoys me more than anything. But it's the Twitter world, so
yes, it is.
Get them all, man. But yeah, appreciate you having me on. It was really fun. I'd love to do it again.
You'll both be back as soon as possible. I appreciate you both. Thank you very much. Best of luck this season. Make sure you go check out and follow Jennifer Akins and Jacob Charno. I'm your host, Sky Guasco. You can find me on Twitter, Sky Guasco, Guasco, on Instagram as well, fantasyfootball_TCK pod. Leave a rate and review anywhere you listen to the Believe podcast networks, and make sure to subscribe. Leave a comment down below on how you feel about the Bills and the Jets heading into 2021. Appreciate y'all for sticking around for episode 414. We'll be back with another one. We'll catch you next time. For Jennifer Akins and Jacob Charno, I'm your host, Sky Guasco, and we are out of here.